So I want to welcome everyone. Today, the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee has a pretty full agenda. We have 3 items that we are going to discuss. And here I'm going to try to make sure that I have all of my notes handy, since we're trying to do everything here virtually. So we have 3 items. We have Office of Human Resources Survey and Implications for Hiring and Retention. We have the FY21 Budget Savings Plan. A lot of items in that particular plan that we have to address. Government Operations Fiscal Policy always has quite a number of those items. And then lastly, we're going to have what I hope it's a brief discussion on the Public Election Fund. We've already done quite a bit of work, but it was a while back. And I thought it would be super important to come back and just do a pretty quick check-in to make sure that that everything that we discussed, it's still viable. So let's see. Let me find my notes here and make sure that we're on board. So for our first item, I want to also welcome Councilmember Albornoz, who early on really wanted to have a briefing on this particular issue, and this has to do with human resources survey. And of course, given that is the new administration last year with a new director of Office of Human Resources, Mr. Berkey Attila, we also felt that this would be a good moment to have a discussion about this, fresh look in terms of what we're doing, how it's going, and all of this to also inform Mr. Attila's work moving forward with this very important office. In my notes, I see that we also, as people who are listed to participate in today's discussion, are Melissa Davis from the Office of Human Resources, Kimberly Williams from the Office of Human Resources, as well as Daryl Gorman, also from the Office of Human Resources. And Mr. Craig Howard has prepared a packet for us that we will be discussing, and then we'll engage in a conversation, a discussion regarding the findings and also some of the areas for follow-up. So I will go ahead and turn it over. Let me first turn it over to Councilmember Albornoz, if my committee members allow, because obviously he's behind the impetus for this particular item. So Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the collaboration with you on the memo we jointly sent to the county executive. We were excited to see Mr. Attila's appointment last year and his experience with change management, but this is his first opportunity to really manage an entire Office of Human Resources, and I'm sure he's gained extensive experience over this last year in the human resource space. But speaking in the first person as a former member of the executive branch, I know how foundationally important the Office of Human Resources is to the entire operation within our county government, and the relationship between the key stakeholders is paramount. And I know morale was low, and so we asked for a baseline survey to affirm what we had been hearing anecdotally, and as we saw the results of that survey, I think it has done that. And it just underscores that there's a lot of room for improvement, and Mr. Attila's change management skills will come in handy. And obviously now through the pandemic in this operation, morale continues to be a challenge with so many issues that all of us are facing, having to work from home and remotely with families and people getting sick. So it is a very important time for us to revisit this topic, and I appreciate the opportunity and adding to a very tight schedule. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Albornoz, and also from my committee colleagues, please feel free to either raise your hand like this or just text me, and I will do my best to make sure that I'm monitoring everything. I also will add to the introduction a little bit more of the background, just to say that the survey, the memo itself requested that the county government administer a survey to department and directors and management leadership service to examine internal, external customer service, innovation, and personnel management in the area of human resources. Also, the survey be repeated at regular intervals to review the progress in human resources management for departments, and that the Government Operations Committee review the results of the survey. So such survey was completed and data collection as well in January. But of course, as it was mentioned, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to postpone this particular review. But today, as it is stated in the packet, we will review the survey's methodology and in response to the council request, summarize the survey findings and OHR's initial plan to address areas of improvement as of March 2020, discuss how OHR's original action plan has evolved and changed due to COVID-19. One of the pieces that I also will highlight, as Councilmember Albornoz stated, obviously everything is in flux, especially because of this pandemic. I think it will have such an extraordinary impact in how organizations manage their human resources. And I know for us, particularly through this pandemic, we have seen firsthand this huge challenge that we have with regards to multicultural, multilingual capacity also in terms of our staffing. And it's something that I hope that we can find some creative, innovative ways to strengthen that area, because I know that it's only going to become more and more of a need and a challenge. So with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Howard, that he can walk us through this piece, and then we'll engage in the conversation. Mr. Craig Howard.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro, and good afternoon to all the council members. As per usual, I don't have a lot to add to the summary you already gave. You already kind of went through all the background very well. The primary purpose of today's work session will be to allow OHR staff, the Director Attia, to brief you all on the results of their survey, and talk a little about what their findings were, and some of the data that came from the survey. But then also, as you mentioned, to kind of talk about the next steps. And there's two components to that. There's the next steps they were planning on in January and in March when they were first going to give the presentation. And then next steps now, given the COVID-19 pandemic and everything that has gone on and the way we've had to change operations, both from a human resources perspective, a logistics perspective, and things like that. And you kind of went into that a little bit, but they'll be able to talk about what their action plan was before, and then what their action plan, which piece of the action plan they're going to kind of continue forward with, and areas where they may be adjusting a little bit to adapt to some new realities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Attia to walk through the summary that's attached to the packet, and then we'll after they kind of go through where they were and where they're going, we can have questions and answers from council members.
Thank you, Craig, for the introduction, and thank you, council members and the GO committee. It's good to be finally back to report on our OHR survey and then things we've been working on. And then thank you for recognizing my team, Jana, Kimberly, Melissa, and Daryl. I brought my subject matter expertise with me, so if there's any really detailed question, I'm hoping that we will be able to satisfy that need. So it's almost a year now since coming up my appointment. When we decided to have the survey, and I just realized that the executive branch was also trying to put out an all-employee survey at the same time, the first time ever employee survey, which was going to be followed up with our annual internal customer service survey that is administered by county staff. Analyzing the questions in both surveys, I quickly realized that number one, it could either be a survey fatigue, and also realized that both of the questions were either not going horizontally deep in the heart of the problem that we would like to look at, and necessarily not going, vertically at the same time, not reaching out where the organization is actually interacting with OHR staff. So with that, we decided, and I had expressed my concerns and my action plan with Councilman Albornoz back in the time, to say that we will be taking the most inflamed parts of OHR, because some of them have already been identified through various surveys, including the employee survey. But take those pieces, namely recruitment and selection, and then class and comp, and do a deeper questioning with the focus group, like go into the hiring managers, the supervisors, the people don't have a chance to be able to participate in the ICS survey, give them the opportunity to really give us their feedback. together, when we look at these results, have revealed important insights for us. We have used these insights to develop strategies, and we were hoping to come back in January and March to talk about those. Like Craig mentioned, some of those insights, which was going to help us better accomplish our mission, have changed, but some of them have remained the same, and then we have made further progress on that. The idea is to foster excellence in people by providing, obviously, the quality human resources services all our employees. Our job has always been to be the support and the consulting group to the department so that they can attract, hire, retain their people to do their jobs better. So a couple of the bright spots. I want to start with the positive, that most of our partners who have taken the survey were satisfied and eager for more opportunities to receive OHR training. And OHR training is in itself a bright spot and a blind spot at the same time. If you look at the ICS, Internal Customer Service Survey, training for OHR, training division, not only one of the highest scoring divisions within OHR, but it is one of the highest scoring divisions in the survey as a whole, including all of the other departments. So it tells us that when we do what we do, we're doing really great. But it also told us that just like the depth of the training and the variety of the training that we would like to do, it wasn't up to par. HR liaisons, when we look at the results, we're generally pleased with their communication with our OHR staff, and they appear to grasp the processes and procedures in critical areas very well. From that initial areas in need of improvement, obviously not meeting the partner demand for high quality training, partners dissatisfied with the convoluted business processes and procedures in especially the areas of the recruitment and selection, as well as class and comp, and more detail, the time that it takes to traverse them. It was very clear for us in short term that we needed to make our processes and procedures easier and faster to use. We wanted to partner. Our partners have some concerns about our communication, especially timeliness and the consistency, and how that this information being spread out. And on our end, our staff, when they spoke to us, to me, they did not feel, majority of my staff did not feel valued by their customers. Again, we quickly realized that we need to improve the quality of the collaboration between OHR and OHR staff and its partners. The goal was to tackle what we call the source of dissatisfaction by making our processes and procedures, again, faster and easier to use, and improving the quality of collaboration between our partners. Strategy was engage staff partners, bring staff and partners into process to reform in order to both attain crucial insights from the front lines and buy-in for change, streamline and processes and procedures in both of these areas, and this is part of the Turn the Curve initiative by the executive branch to hold facilitated discussions with our staff and the partners, learn lessons from this experience and conduct facilitated discussions to map out the class and comp processes. So one of the things that I would like to get in here and just talking about the streamlined processes and procedures were specifically starting with the recruitment and selection. One of the things that we've done, we wanted to eliminate the requests coming through the fence and then going back over the fence between the departments, reducing the paper and emails. Emails, when you have a lot of emails, it's likely to get lost and then likely to add more time to the process. So business improvements was done in multiple forms and then making them into fillable forms and eliminating a couple of the multiple fillable process to add time to it. We worked with council on this one early on and with other departments also to create a little bit of what we call a customizable recruitment process that wasn't done before, trying to meet with the customer early on, not after the recruitment request was made, but get in and understand just like what the need is, what the position should be, and creating and stitching together not only a position description and strategy to go out and recruit, but also combining all qualified candidates into one category of qualified, and if it's requested, then using the preferred criteria. We realized that that was very crucial after our focus group meetings with multiple directors and HR liaisons and managers, that most of the time they felt like they were boxed in. Only they can see the preferred criteria candidates, and they wouldn't be able to see who else is also qualified. Obviously, it is a way to reduce the number of applicants that one needs to see, but we were taking a different approach on that. We were taking it very binary. We lost the reason why we were doing that. So we brought the decision making back to the departments, and to see, just like, let us know whether or not you would like to see everybody that is qualified, or you would like us to do a pre-sort for you and give you the preferred criteria. That was one important step. Also, we realized that there are a lot of departments, namely, I'll give you a few, HHS and ABS, and larger departments have HR teams, that they were doing duplication of work like we do, and they were providing some sort of a service, sending it over to us. We were starting from square one and then replicating the steps. When we met with them, we start divvying up the work at their ability to do and in their interest to do some of these tasks on their own, therefore moving the decision making and an ability to decide certain things to that level, therefore freeing up some of the sources that we have here, resources, to be able to help the smaller departments under the shared cost services model. As you could see, there are a few departments in the organization may have less than 10 or 5 people, and some of these administrative specialist persons are there. They're budget analysts, they're procurement specialists, contract administrator, legislative analyst, liaison to council, as well as HR liaison. So in order for us to be able to make do with what we have, we quickly realized that why can't we push some of the responsibilities? Again, not the force, but push when there's ability and capability and an interest on the larger departments to do those things. When we coupled those, I think that we had a few quick wins and created selection guidelines, quick tips for hiring managers, created videos on how to apply for applicants. And then this is not only for our employees, but for our communities. We provide library hosted trainings with our recruitment specialists, go out and then to the communities, teach them how to go into the MCG recruitment process, very convoluted, very old, very cumbersome application, to make sure that they're not missing a step, so therefore they're eliminated and they're not considered. So that was one of the things that we wanted to really highlight and make sure that is happening. The other thing that we have done in terms of freeing up resources, scheduling for the examinations and enhancements, that was done very manually. So we now moved into an automated way. Obviously, this is COVID related, but we were always looking to improve our new employee orientation program. There was a lot of interest in there. This is due to COVID. Within 10 days, we were able to actually completely overhaul, redesign an online virtual employee orientation program. And moving from there on to the streamline some of the processes in the class and compensation, which was having a huge role and an impact in actually the time it takes for us to hire, was the wage equity analysis. Through our various business process improvements, obviously, remember the survey told us this, that most people weren't happy with the time that it takes for the recruitment and selection and OHR class and compensation, namely the time that it takes that we produce the results. So various analysis into our business processes. We looked at one of the quick wins was being able to address the wage equity analysis process change. But I want to be very careful. We're not eliminating the wage equity process change, but we realize that when we do the process for wage equity, the results of the wage equity are not going to be taking place until such time the certain individual receives merit status. This is 6 months down the road. So it was very quick to my team and me and everybody else who was involved in that process. It didn't make any sense to treat that as a engineering term serial process, meaning creating a codependency for an offer to be extended for this process to be completed. And then this process could have taken anywhere somewhere between 15 days to 30 days, in some cases, maybe even longer. So what we did was, in order to reduce the average time to hire and then get to a conditional offer extended to an potential employee, we said, you can move forward because you have the tools, and then you know your people, that you know what level of salary that needs to be put in for the offer. And then we will come back to this and complete our wage equity analysis on a parallel process, and then get back to you in 30 days the results are, so that if anything that needs to be changed or accommodated within the 6 months before that employee reaches merit status, that will be done. So that was a big quick win for us to be able to actually reduce some of the time it takes to bring our people on board. At the same time, now we're going deeper into the wage equity analysis itself, like how it's best to provide that analysis, and maybe even take less time in there and then be more accurate. I also would like to talk a little bit about some of the analysis that we've done on the average time to hire. You all heard me in the past when I'm talking about, as a business process improvement person, when I came in and then we laid out all the steps. There are multiple steps involved in hiring, and then some of these steps are within OHR, some of these steps are definitely at the department, and sometimes it just goes back and forth. But the way that mainly we've been calculating this average time to hire was from the date of the posting to the date of the acceptance. I wanted to look at the time that it takes between. I wanted to look at the average posting date, and I wanted to look at the average time it takes to hire. And I wanted to look at it in a way that just like, how does this actually move from 1 month to another? And at the beginning of the year, and right around when we started looking at these things in October and November, we had days, the average days of these came almost 80 days. In October, we had about 78 days, average was 90, and then December at 77. But around the holiday season and right after the COVID, obviously with the budget freeze and everything else that moving things up, it just like the number again skyrocketed. But important thing for us to understand from here is posting days is not something that we can control. I mean, that's up to the departments. They can choose to keep it open for 1 week, or they can choose to keep it open for 2 weeks. If there are not enough candidates, or the candidates that they applied did not meet the criteria, agencies and the departments have the flexibility to be able to extend that. So I just really wanted to know, if I were to take the posting days out, what really the heart of the process that it takes. And on average, is about 20 days we spend on posting. And average time to fill, taking it the most recent one right now, and I'm not going to hide this number from you, and I know the reason why it's up, it's now 180 days. 108 days, not 180 days, I'm sorry, 108. And if we take the posting days, in general, OHR takes about average 9 days to get to an eligibility list. And our internal compliance mark for that is to get everything done back to the agencies within 10 days. So we're very compliant on that. And then days with departments, OMS, wage equity, and all that is about 82 days of the entire process is actually is the back and forth. So what I wanted to do is to be able to create more transparency and accountability in the process, where everybody can be held accountable. So if I am monitoring my objectives, meaning the very first one is after the posting is closed, I need to get to the departments within 10 days. Now I can verify my compliance. I can see just like I want 100% compliance. What that means is I would like every position that eligibility needs to be created needs to be done before 10 days. But when it goes to the departments, and then this is no fault of the departments, things go to what I consider is a supermassive black hole, because our current system will not allow us to be able to see the steps that the department needs to take in order to move this process along and then meet the total turnaround time. Namely, how many days it took for the departments to be able to actually select who needed to be interviewed after the eligibility list was created. After you have identified who needs to be interviewed, how long it took you to schedule the interviews, how long it took the departments to finalize those interviews, make their selection so that we can move on to the background checks and then the wage equity if it's needed and or OMS clearance. The goal, which I'm not going to beat the dead horse, was to be able to move into a better software application cloud solution where we could see these each milestone and then create data and accountability around it so we could push and then pressure so that overall time it takes to fill would go down. But the reasons we don't need to get into here, that needs to be now delayed. However, it's not going to stop OHR. Now I'm working with procurement departments and then their people and my technical people working together to create a similar way solicitation tracker that we could see. We would like to be able to create these milestones for our internal departments to be able to see how many recruitments that are active and then where in the recruitment process they are at currently. Is it with the department or is it with the OHR? We believe that if that information is routinely shared and then reviewed by the department heads, hiring managers or general managers, they will put the pressure and then make the corrections that is needed for us to be able to bring our people fast here. Because I know that if they take 100 days, especially taking that long, will have a unwanted impact on the underrepresented populations where these individuals may need to get into a job and start earning right away. And I don't think that we should be relaxed about, oh, it's going to take 100 days, 3 months for you to start earning. So that's an added pressure. But also, as the county, we cannot afford losing talent to competition because some other jurisdictions are acting faster than us and then taking the creme de la creme, and then we're only dealing with just like who's not picked by others. I would like to maybe pause for 1 second and take questions, if any.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Director Attila, for that presentation. I see Councilmember Albornoz just texting.
Thank you, Mr. Attila. This is going to be an odd introduction, but you'll understand why in a second. I used to work at a Tex-Mex restaurant, and when it was a birthday celebration, you used to have to recruit other waiters to come over and sing happy birthday to the person getting the birthday. And it was always hard to recruit different waiters and waitresses to be able to sing. I have a guest.
Hola.
Hello.
Maybe sing happy birthday with you.
He can sing happy
You got
birthday.
your own HR situation.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. If she could go, that would be great. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Go on out. Go outside to the rain. Yeah. Come on outside to the rain. Thank you. So, sorry, rainy day at home. Anyways, my point is that when departments have to interview candidates, they have to recruit people within the department to actually interview the candidate. And that was never easy. And it's a step in the process of the hiring process that I think is often overlooked. And so you have to schedule find the people who are going to have the time and the energy and the background to take that interview seriously, and then to coordinate their schedules. And so I think that's a component, Mr. Attila, that we want to focus on moving forward, because I think that will be helpful in trying to expedite that process.
Thank you very much for that. I'll give you an example. I have just posted one of my positions that I have since I've been joined. I don't have an administrative assistant and a specialist, so now I'm about to hire one to help me. But my recruitment team, when they met with me, they said we need to make an example hire out of this one. We need to lead by example. So we met with my team, and then yesterday the posting was out. And the very first thing that they asked me to do, have I identified who's going to be on my panel? Do I have my questions ready? And then have I already blocked time and scheduled it with the others? So what I had to go through with my team as an exercise to reverse engineer to say, okay, we posted today. We're going to have 2 weeks, like decided 2 weeks open. It's going to take maybe 9 days to create the list. The second the list is created, then we're going to go through that list, and then we have 1 week to select who it is. And then in that week, we already have 3 days blocked with the people that are involved in the interview in their calendar. So if everything moves along, then we do not have to scramble around to see who's going to be on the panel. So it's not a relay, okay, I'm done now, you, and then you start fresh at that point. Rather than we're trying to make this, it's just like certain things we know each step, and we have an idea how long each step's going to take. So why can't we create a standard operating procedure that is consistent across the board, that each department does what you said and what I'm planning to do to help make this a little bit more governed. But at the same time, I also wanted to see, not anecdotally, but in terms of data, to see just like where these are happening, right? Maybe some departments are doing a really great job. They have a great procedure in place. Data will show that. If I can see that, and if I can see Department A is excellent, definitely a bright spot, but Department B is not doing well. We don't want to say that just like Department B, you're doing bad or you're not doing good. We can go back and understand and train and help them as to come closer to the execution of Department A, and then those are the things that we want to analyze and then do targeted things. One of the things that I also looked at, Councilman Albornoz, was we looked at the histogram distribution of like how many we do, and I have that in front of me. I would like to tell you that we do have actually good numbers that most of it, if you look at the value of the curve, everybody is doing a great job. But we have one job, for example, it's an arborist, and you heard me actually speaking about this a few weeks ago in one of the other hearings for highway services. It's been taking 247 days. I mean, it's mind-blowing, but I know that when we get into this detail, we realize that this is an extremely hard-to-fill job, and it really skews the data. But now we have a tool, and I mentioned that early on, it's the LinkedIn recruitment and sourcing tool that we completely abandoned maybe in Montgomery County for long years, that what I consider our recruitment is ice fishing. We just post it on our website, and then we expect that people will know and apply, and also that the system is very tough. So now, if we can identify these positions that are hard to fill by just looking at their numbers, we could use proactive approach to go out and understand just like highway services. Who do you need? What are the competencies? Let's go and then prep the LinkedIn universe. Let's get active recruitment. Let's ping these people. Maybe they're actively looking, maybe they're passively looking. Let's find them in. Let's put them in a pipeline, create a queue. When it's ready, go individually out to them and make sure that here's our posting. We would like you to apply because we really like your resume, and then we would like you to apply to this job. Maybe we can get that number down. So if we do that, I mean, if I can take a 247 day, which is a part of my average that drives the number up, to a reasonable, let's call it 100 days is reasonable, and then our numbers will go up drastically. So this is a pilot period. I would like to really show the success of this. And I'm working with Gail Roper, our new CIO. She's going through this organizational transformation. I work with Bob Dorfman on ABS. What we've been doing so far is looking at their org chart and then engaging with them early on to see just like, okay, what do you want in your organization? How would you like this recruitment to happen? Let's work with you front end so that you understand everything that you need to do when it's your turn. Creating a perfect position description, not just like taking something out, and then engaging us early allows us to be able to go to places to find those individuals early on. So those are the things that we're planning to do. And just one more thing that I want to add, and in the communications, this is due to COVID. Because of the ever-changing and the fast nature of the policies and the procedures that needed to be communicated with the 10,000 plus employees, we moved into the Teams environment, and then this is thanks to DTS and their ability that just provided that environment for us to be able to use, obviously. But we've been hosting these live events that you're directly addressing on a weekly basis our HR liaisons on everything that we do. And then we would like to maintain that weekly events even after long gone COVID. Hopefully, we would like to do that, because that would really speak to just hey, we do not know where to get this information. We get conflicting information, and then I only know this person I called. Sometimes he calls me back. So I guess this us being in front of the HR liaisons on a weekly manner and then putting ourselves out there for them to ask our questions have been very instrumental, and we would like to keep that moving forward.
So one of the things that I guess I just want to set the context for this question, but obviously it's pretty clear and obvious that our local government in terms of service delivery is only as good as the people who are there to deliver it. And so we have come to expect very high level, high quality services. And I think that's obviously what our residents expect, and why everybody feels so great about living in Montgomery County. It's been clear that for many, many years, especially when we have discussions in our HHS committee, this challenge of, culturally proficient, linguistic capacity, etc., would come up every single time. And after we passed our racial equity and social justice legislation, this is also a very important component. Just yesterday, we were engaged in a conversation with our Latino Health Initiative regarding what we have now, we all know that there is this very stark disproportionality affecting the Latino community with regards to COVID-19. And one of the things that one of the doctors in the call said, point blank, she said, well, I don't understand, why is it that the county cannot require for certain positions that are going to be working directly with these communities, require that they be, that the person be, proficient in Spanish. I mean, it's just like a no-brainer, and so these questions are out there, and, we've had conversations regarding, surge staffing during this pandemic, 311, other issues, et cetera. How can we, fast track this, et cetera? But to me, at the end of the day, again, it comes back to this notion of racial equity and social justice, that if we don't have the human resource capacity that is qualified vis-a-vis cultural proficiency and linguistic proficiency, then we're missing the mark on our goals of service delivery, impact, and outcomes. And so what have you identified as innovative ways to enhance that piece? As these communities continue to grow, and again, I think for us, for many years, we were trying to address issues of, mental health and positive youth development, or, parental engagement and things like that. Now we're faced with life and death situations. I mean, this is a pandemic. And so now it's just urgent. What have you identified thus far as, ways where you can literally say, by this date, we should have recruited X number of bilingual X, Y, and Z, or people that reflect certain communities, et cetera, like particular numbers, particular outcomes, because to be honest, we've had this conversation over and over and over and over again. 2022 will be my last year on the council, and we've had it since 2009 when I joined there, at least that I've been engaged in that. We're still struggling with that. So what have you identified, or what other best practices have you seen around the country where they have gone into this with a precise attention to specifically identify, metrics and deliver that?
Thank you, Council Member Navarro. That's a great question. I just wanted to give you one fact that we actually can require and do require Spanish proficiency in our jobs, or it could be put in as a preferred criteria. So I believe that is left up to the the departments to determine the position's involvement and then the level of involvement with the Hispanic communities that could lead them to make the determination whether or not the position requires to have Spanish proficiency or it's preferred.
This doctor was asking us, Councilman Albornoz and I, why wasn't it just a matter of it being required versus preferred, that then, leaves that space where then folks kind of say, well, we just didn't find anybody that was qualified. So I just put that as feedback from those who are in the front lines right now working with this community during this pandemic.
I guess that one thing that we could do rather than just like taking directly with the department's comment on whether or not this position requires or it is preferred, one thing that we could start immediately doing is to be more conversation around the topic to hash it out so that, understand what the position's involvement, what the future looks like for that position. And we hope that the departments that wants to hire for these positions will have a better information than us. So we would like to be able to not dictate, but rely on their expertise as to who is the best person for this job. But one thing that immediate improvement that we could do is to increase the conversation. What we're currently doing, and this is exacerbated by the fact that the COVID-19 required our mobilization of our internal employees who have either advanced or intermediate level of any language, but the highest percentage of secondary language outside of English is Spanish at this point, and the demand for the secondary language is the highest is also Spanish. So what we're going through is doing what we call not an audit but the recertification of the positions, whether or not, to your point, this position should require and or should be preferred. How many people are in those positions? Do they need to be recertified? At the same time, also trying to move it into from a very cumbersome manual discovery and application process to an automated process so that we could actually spend more time on the substance of the work rather than the clerical side of the work.
I appreciate that point that you just made, and I also want to make sure I point this out as a matter of being on the record, right? We have been following the data, especially during COVID-19. So we've been following the data. So every time we, receive updates on 311, it has been consistent. For example, that in terms of particular assistance, requests for particular assistance, up to 80% of the calls have been Spanish language calls, right? And we had, for a long time, issues with people not accessing 311 that were Spanish speakers. But during the pandemic, that has been consistent, right? We've also seen in terms of the data as well, as I said, that every other demographic group, we have been so fortunate that we've seen, the trend going down in terms of positivity and in terms of, cases, et cetera. The Latino community has gone in the total opposite direction, right? And so, in terms of communication from the very beginning, this was another area where we saw it. So I just want to say that for the record, because again, when we talk about the language capacity that we need, the data has been very clear that for this particular community, that is something that is absolutely in demand. And in terms of a public health emergency, it's even more concerning, because if we're not able to get a handle of the situation in those communities, it affects the entire county. So I just wanted to also just highlight that because, again, it's very much directed to what are we doing to recruit people who reflect our community, so that way when they're doing this kind of service delivery, it's effective.
If I may follow up on that, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I would like to say, in general, our employee percentages as a whole should be reflective of our population percentages of the county. So if our counties have certain percentages of different race and ethnicity or demographics group, and our work population should be somewhat in line with that. So that's the higher overarching goal. We have started doing the analysis on that because since I started the county, a cohort of us, including our newly appointed Chief Equity Officer, Tiffany Ward, Andrew Klein, and a couple of other directors as well, we've been going to COG-GARE racial equity and social inclusion training. And what we hear there over and over again is just like you need to expose the data, contrast the data, judge your notions, and then see what you could do. But moving from that topic, wanted to tell you that the first 4 new hires of MC311, primarily Spanish speaking, so that's one thing. But I believe that 311 is not the first line of defense. 311 should be only if you can't get the information, or the information, I mean, it's not coming to you. It should come to you before you even start seeking. And if it's not there, second step, if you were to seek, you should be able to acquire that information a lot easier than, and then the third step should be that just that you need to call the 311, and when you call the 311, you should be able to get the information that you need. That really is going to change some of the outward-facing departments' way of thinking, and because I believe COVID, not in Montgomery County, but everywhere else, actually showed that nobody was ready for it, and then we cannot afford to be in this situation moving forward. So that's going to definitely impact the way that we handle recruitment. But I don't want to miss the question that you asked, because you asked me specific timeline or percentages and a goal. Have we identified it? And no, we haven't, but it's part of our process. That we struggled with it. This was a plan as the racial equity work was happening, equitable hiring tools that we were trying to develop. Even though we didn't want to put pause on it, because the work that we would do immediately impacts the COVID-19 response, unfortunately we had to pause it because of we were being stretched too thin. And because one thing that we're going to do after this, and then things are starting to slow a little bit. I can see from my own work that I can actually dedicate some non-COVID related work follow-up with my team. That's just going to be part of the equitable hiring tool that we're going to create that should have specific goals in it. But we need to be also very careful that we shouldn't have targets for X percentage of Y and Z percentage of this type. But what more importantly, making sure that where some of the demand is, and then where some of these services are being produced, and then where those gaps are in terms of required Spanish speaking, Korean speaking, or whatever other languages are, to make sure that we work with the departments that we focus on those. Again, going back to LinkedIn, I think some tool like that will be very important, but we also understand that not everybody is mobile friendly or at that level that maybe use LinkedIn. So we're going to resume our work with the Hispanic Employees Association, with the nonprofits, schools, to make sure that our jobs are being posted there. Because if we're not creating a pool of applicants that is diverse, our recruitment from that pool is not going to be diverse. So we need to move the step from not selecting from the pool, but how are we filling that pool is quite important.
Thank you. I want to do a time check to see if there are any other questions from my committee members. And also, Mr. Howard, anything that I've missed that we need to wrap up?
I think for Mr. Katz. Sorry.
I just wanted to very quickly say thank you very much to Council Members Navarro and Council Member Albernas for asking this, and of course to Mr. Burke as well, because this is very important that we had this discussion, and candidly, until I got this packet, I had forgotten that we hadn't completed this discussion. I remember the beginning of it, but I hadn't remembered that we hadn't gotten to the end of it. But we need to do this. This is so very necessary for not only for our employees, but for our employees who they are serving, because we need to be working together to get the job done, especially at all times, especially during these most difficult times. So thank you for asking for it. Thank you for doing it. And now our harder work continues because we have to correct what we found out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just wanted to note, I just wanted to note that one of the requests of the initial requests was that the survey be repeated. over time, so we can see kind of how the results play out with reform. So I will work with, obviously the timeline has gotten a little bit shifted, but I'll work with Mr. Attia about the timeline for the next iteration of the survey, as well as following up on all the different issues that have been raised. And I think this is obviously the beginning of the conversation on these issues. And so we'll have a lot more discussion. I was also thinking as we were talking about, each year during the budget, we usually talk about the personnel management review and some of the data, the employee demographic data that each department or each agency has. Again, that's something that we did not do this year with our truncated budget format, but that might be something that would be helpful to provide again, so we can kind of have a basis to track some of the high-level data over the years.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz, anything else that you'd like to say as we wrap up?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Attila. A lot of work to be done, as the Council President said, and I look forward to helping in any way I can. Thank you. I'll be dropping off now for the next few items, but go get them, Geo Committee.
You're welcome to
We'll
stay.
do our best.
We love company.
Madam Chair, if I can follow up with one quick sentence to the repeat of the survey, that is extremely important for me to be able to see the progress and the impact that I'm making. So my recommendation would be we're planning to do the employee survey the second year again. Internal customer service survey is not going anywhere. We're going to do it again. And I would like to do the same survey, same questions again for me, and then just to compile all of those three to see how the progress has been made. I am comfortable the second time after 1 year coming back and asking the same questions, and I'm putting my neck on the line that just like those numbers will improve, at least on the perception from maybe the numbers to hire may not go up because we rolled the numbers up, but I think the perception from the department heads, MLS, and then the hiring managers is going to be more positive than where we started. So I am anxious to see those results, and I'm completely supporting it. And then we just need to make sure that we're not creating an employee fatigue, and then we follow the same 1, 2, 3 punch. That would be my proposed way to move forward to do the second round of the surveys.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the work that has taken place. I will again just say that I think this pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons, and to the extent that we can at least begin to triage the examination of particular departments, going back to what you mentioned about having staff that reflects the community. I think we can all agree that there are some departments like HHS, for example, where we need to make sure that capacity does exist, because as has been said time and time again, and I hope that's not the case, but it's reality. This COVID-19 issue may be with us for a while in some shape or form. And so for us to think that we can just continue the way that we have so far, I think it's a mistake, and we do need to pay very close attention and examine, as I said, particular departments and particular areas where we have to, as a matter of life and death, we have to have that kind of capacity. So really appreciate everything you've done, Director Attila. I'm sure that when you signed up for this job, none of us, of course, could predict that we're going to be facing all of this, but it's been extraordinary how our employees have stepped up and adapted during a moment like this, and I very much appreciate your leadership on this.
Thank you. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without the support of my wonderful team, that they deserve all the credit.
Absolutely. Thank them for us as well. All right, so now we're going to go into our marathon savings plan item. I saw that chart and it was like, wow, okay, here we go. Let's get ready.
That's why they invented the word "oi." Yeah.
That's right. Oi and ay, ay, ay both go hand in hand.
There you go.
So we do have a chart. This is item 2. And as people might know, given specifically this particular difficult time because of the pandemic and because of the uncertainty in terms of the impact on our fiscal picture and reality, as everybody probably remembers, the County Council made a decision to adopt a continuity of services budget precisely because we wanted to be proactive in understanding and being fiscally responsible and positioning ourselves in the best possible way And so we did that, and it was not an easy exercise. Council President Katz did an amazing job in getting us through all of this in a virtual fashion.
A lot of help.
But we did have conversations about the very real need for a savings plan, and that's what we're facing right now. And each committee is going through their particular area, and then we will take this up at full council. But for government operations and fiscal policy, obviously we have quite a number of items. So I think what we will do is, as usual, since we do have a chart, is very well organized. We will go item by item. Our council staff person assigned to it will tell us what the recommendation is from the executive and what they recommend. And then we will, as a committee, open up for questions if that is necessary, because we do have the appropriate staff from the administration. But obviously, we're not going to, I think, have the opportunity to go into a lot of in-depth conversation, because if we did, then we would have to be here for probably a couple of days. So let's try this and see how it goes. But obviously, if there are outstanding questions, etc., then we'll pause. We'll try to understand that, and then we will move right along. So let's see. If I look at the chart, I think we're starting with Deputy Director Howard. Is that right? As our council staff person to walk us through at least, let's see, 5 particular items. So take it away.
Yes. All right. Sounds good. So the first one actually is intergovernmental relations. And that one is one that we do need to have at least a small discussion on. The reduction here that was recommended was $68,186 in operating expenses. And what this would do is it would eliminate a professional services contract OIR has with a firm that works to ensure that the county retains existing federal leases and identifies opportunities to attract additional federal leases or additional federal jobs within the county. It's a contract that the county has had for the last several years. That initially was within the Department of Economic Development and then got switched over to OIR when they dissolved. Is one of the themes you'll note as we go through the different departments, as much of this savings is occurring from lapse and things like that with vacant positions. OIR does not have that, and so the only thing they had to give, so to speak, was his professional services operating expenses. So we understand the reason why this was included as an item in the savings plan. However, staff does have some concerns with the elimination of this contract, given the current economic situation and uncertainties going forward. To not have this service available if there are some changes of plans from federal agencies, it might be beneficial to have it. So we have provided a couple different options for the committee to consider. First, of course, is you could take the reduction as recommended by the executive. The second would be to reject the recommendation and continue the contract, knowing that if there is an additional savings plan, you could always come back to this item. And the third one, and Ms. Wanger is also here to answer any questions you may have, would be to take a partial reduction, reduce the budget by $28,000, and leave $40,000 for them to restructure this contract and look to procure it on an hourly basis as opposed to a retainer payment. So they might be able to essentially have some level of services if needed, but at a cheaper funding level. And I'll turn it back over to you now.
Thank you. And I want to also state that this is a amount of $68,186. Councilmember Friedson.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you to staff. Thank you to Ms. Wanger, I had a chance to speak to earlier. My view would be we should keep something in here given the importance of the moment and the fact that if there is any asset that we are positioned well to take advantage of in this unprecedented moment in history, and if there's any need, it's federally related biohealth science areas, which are growth areas for the federal government and significant areas of opportunity. I do think that there is room and a willingness to renegotiate and to understand the moment that we're in. So whether it's the council staff recommendation of $40,000 or something less but close to that, I would be comfortable with that, but definitely do think leaving $30,000 or $40,000 in here to maintain what we are doing, allow some flexibility to renegotiate and make sure that we're not leaving a significant and important economic development opportunity or biohealth science growth opportunity on the table.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Council President Katz.
And I'm in agreement with that. Candidly, the entire $68,000 would not concern me. I believe at a time when you need additional revenue, you hire people to make certain, or you keep people to make certain that you can get additional businesses and additional federal jobs in our area, which create additional businesses. So I'm fine with reducing it, but if it's possible to the $40,000 range. But I'm also fine if we decided to keep it at 68.
Great. I think that the option of reducing it a little bit is fine. So, I mean, I would be fine with, leaving $40,000 for this work and then seeing how things go. I do agree that this is a moment where we have to, invest in post, in recovery and things of that nature. If anything, though, I want to make sure that obviously, however this is renegotiated, that we ensure that that message is loud and clear, that our expectations, we have to be so aggressive, I think, obviously, especially in this region. And so to me, I think leaving the $40,000 and revisiting if we have to, I think it's a good investment for what we're trying to achieve. So if my colleagues feel comfortable with that, it looks like I see some thumbs up. So I would say that the committee is unanimous in recommending option number 2. Mr. Howard.
Okay, wonderful. Now we'll next move on to Office of the County Council. We are, for our office, offering up a recommendation of $365,976. This will occur through lapsing 4 vacant central staff positions. 2 positions will be lapsed for 2 months of the fiscal year, while the 2 other positions will be frozen for the entire year. While certainly there will be impacts to this, we believe that we can absorb them and keep doing the work that we need to do with these reductions.
Got it. Any comments from my colleagues? Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm happy to go with the staff recommendation here and go along with it. I just wanted to note, Finance has been asked to step up in massive ways, largely because the council has really stepped up to put forward a number of very significant and robust programs. And I just, first of all, wanted to thank the finance staff. I know they have taken on a greater role than they ever have before going through these grants. I know we push for it to move faster and for us to do more. I'll continue to do that. I know my colleagues will continue to do that, but I know that the staff in the finance department and Mr. Covey are working really hard at that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that here as we make these decisions, that this is an unprecedented moment. We are asking teams in different departments to take on greater responsibilities and more responsibilities than we ever have before. And finance is as good example of that in county government as there is, in terms of all of the COVID response grant programs that we have put forward, much of which has fallen onto the finance teams. I just wanted to thank them here.
Thank you. Ditto. So I will acknowledge that this is not an easy decision for me to make, because I think that we have worked so hard in acknowledging that our council staff complement has actually suffered from some vacancies, and the workload has just, I think, multiplied many times over. And our, 6th floor staff has done incredible work in stepping up and filling in those duties, as well as our personal council office staff. Everybody has worked together very, very well and has gone above and beyond. But considering and recognizing the moment that we are facing, I think that we're gonna have to, accept this particular recommendation. Are my colleagues okay? Any objection?
Yeah, and I apologize. I got a little confused there on the on the item. I apologize, but yes, I echo that point, and I will very quickly reiterate my previous point again when we get to the appropriate point in the agenda, with apologies to the chair for being out of order.
No, it's okay, because I'm like, well, you know what? In general, he's absolutely right. Finance has done an amazing job.
Made sense to me as well.
Correct point, wrong time, right?
Look at us. We just all kind of go with the flow. No problem.
There you go. We knew where you were.
Even when I'm wrong, I'm right. I just want to note that.
Let's not get carried away here.
Why not? Take advantage of that particular moment. All right. So I think that we will accept the recommendation from staff.
Okay, moving on. The next one is the Office of the County Executive. And there's a total of $341,162 in reductions, or 6% of their budget. A large portion of that, most of that, is from turnover savings or lapsing of vacant positions. There are a couple operating cuts for professional services and training. One I did want to mention, there is a cut of $33,000 within the internal audit program, so I did ask for some more information on that. And internal audit staff believe that the work they are doing, this cut will not have any impacts on their FY21 audit plan and services that they were planning to provide, and they can absorb that within their work program. So staff concurs with the executive's recommendation.
All right, Councilmember Friedson, was that, I did have, okay, it was the previous one, thank you. All right, so any objection to this particular recommendation? Hearing no objections, we will accept that.
Okay. Moving on next to the Ethics Commission, there's a reduction of $21,916, which is 6% of their operating budget. And the reduction here is related to IT systems. The staff director for the Ethics Commission notes that, due to previous IT investments, the commission is able to function, remotely, and their IT systems is working well. And the commission is well positioned to absorb the reduction without impacting operations. So council staff concurs with the executive.
Excellent. I see Mr. Cobb. I want to thank you for everything that you are doing and for that note. Let me see, my colleagues have any objections to this recommendation?
As long as they can continue doing the important work they're doing, I'm comfortable.
Okay, great. And the last one for me is the Office of Human Resources, who you just spoke with. So their reduction is $85,568, 1.1% of their FY21 appropriation. And this would come from reducing the number of occupational classification studies that they'll conduct during the fiscal year. And they'll continue to work with McGeo to make sure that they're conducting the occupational studies that are required.
All right. Any objection to the recommendation for OHR?
Nope.
Hearing none, we will accept that particular recommendation as well. Okay.
And next up is Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith. This is F.
Good afternoon. I'm also joined by Ms. Lamarzi, the Inspector General, for this item. And so for the Inspector General's office, the recommendation includes $30,200 relating to operating expenses for various consulting services and general office supplies. The Inspector General notes that most of these savings are accrued through the remote working policies right now, and so they offered them up. And in addition, there's $57,455 for lapsed personnel. It's two positions based on the timing of those hirings, and so again, the IG has said that these would be able to not impact services greatly during fiscal 21 based on the actual hiring time. Again, Ms. Lamarzi is here if you guys have any questions. And the council staff does recommend or concur with the executive's recommended reductions.
All right, it's good to see you, Ms. Lamarzi, and also take this opportunity to thank you for everything that you are doing as well. Again, this is not, my ideal situation. For none of us it is, but these are unprecedented times. Any objection from my colleagues regarding this particular recommendation? Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I don't have an objection. I just want to make clear, I just reiterated, I think it's an important point. This committee has really focused on strengthening the Inspector General's office to make sure that we can keep up with the need to provide the type of oversight that is expected of a place like Montgomery County, of a government of our size. And this moment, more than probably any other moment ever, we need an inspector general that has all of the tools necessary, with all of the federal funding, with how quickly we're moving. We're, even not the type of fraud that we're used to having be inspected, but just carelessness, things that have to move faster in the best of intentions than what we're really designed to do in government. It is ripe for issues. It is ripe for challenges. We owe it to the taxpayers who we're responsible for safeguarding their hard-earned dollars to make sure that things are being handled the right way. And so I just want to reiterate that and just get an acknowledgement here on the public record that the Inspector General, who has been doing a tremendous job initiating some of the work that we have tried to provide you the resources to do, that these cuts, while not insignificant, will not in any way prohibit you from doing the work that you need to do to make sure that taxpayer dollars at this time are being expended efficiently, appropriately, and legally.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of your support. These really are changes that we can absorb at this time, and I think it is a matter of efficiency on our part also to put this money back toward other projects and programs that the county needs while we are continuing to get folks in and hire so that we can continue to do the work that you're expecting.
I appreciate that. Well, with the Inspector General's blessing, I'm certainly happy to go along with it. I just thought it was an important point to make on the record here. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Okay, so hearing no objection, we're going to accept this particular recommendation. And again, Ms. LaMarcy, thank you so much for everything that you are doing. Okay, Mr. Smith.
Sure, I'm going to fill in for Mr. Drummer, who's unfortunately unable to make it for this item. And so the next item is the Office of the County Attorney. I'm joined by Mr. Hanson and some of his staff if you have any questions related to this budget. The executive has recommended two savings, $5,100 in operating expenses based for general office supplies. And these are just one-time reductions that the Office of the County Attorney believes they can absorb due to the current working procedures. And in addition, there's $188,295 for personnel. These are for two positions that will be lapsed for the entire year. And based on Mr. Drummer's recommendation, he concurred with the county executive's recommended reductions.
Right. Mr. Hanson, anything you would like to add?
No, not too much. Obviously, the county attorney's office is primarily made up of personnel costs, its budget at any rate. Lapsing these two positions will cause some pain, but I believe we'll be able to absorb the work that these folks would have done if we had been able to hire them for the coming year.
Okay, thank you. All right, colleagues, any questions, any objections? Council President Katz.
Yeah, certainly no objections. I am concerned, and I'll certainly go along with this, but I am concerned when we lapse someone for an entire year. I know that it's not like they weren't going to be doing something, and we at times have additional needs that we don't anticipate, and especially the county attorney's office is one of those areas where we sometimes have to hire additional people or contract employees. So I will go along with it, but if it is needed, just as Councilmember Friedson and Councilmember Navarro said for the Inspector General's office, which I agree with what they said, if this is needed, please do not hesitate to let us know, because your work is extremely important and we need to make certain that your work continues.
Thank you very much. Your support, the GL Committee's support over the years has been deeply appreciated by my office, as well as the entire council. I appreciate that.
All right. Okay, any other comments, any objections? We will accept the recommendation. Thank you so much, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
All right. So
And now
now
it's
we're on to item H,
Mm-hmm.
Community Engagement Cluster. Ms. Chen.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Oh, good.
I'm actually very excited that Council President Katz just talked about lapsing for a year, because actually this, for community engagement cluster, these 3 positions are being lapsed for 6 months, exactly for that reason of not eliminating the position, but allowing the flexibility going forward. And they're actually not all 50%, of the position lapse. It varies between, 30% to 45%. So I did want to make one technical note, and this was just not able to be revised in time. The fiscal year 21 approved budget of 254,226, the lapse to personnel in community engagement cluster is actually 283,764, which represents 44.8% of the recommended reduction of 127,113.
Okay. Great, and that will be, I guess, corrected when we go to full council, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, I mean, again, I think this is one of those situations where we have to do what we have to do, but this, I think, community engagement cluster has played a pivotal role, especially during this pandemic, and, I'm always very conscientious about where we're placing our capacity and where we're not. So, again, I know that this is just a precedented time and we have to do this, but it is something to keep an eye on. Are there any objections from my colleagues regarding this recommendation? Okay, without objection, we will accept that. Thank you so much, Ms. Chen.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Hey, Councilmember Friedson, look, it's item I, finance. Mr. DeFazio is here to tell us a little bit about this particular recommendation, and Councilmember Friedson probably, may want to add a little bit more accolades. So we'll see how that goes. All right, Mr. DeFazio.
I'll add some more color in addition to the blush that is my embarrassment.
You're good. You're good. All right, Mr. DeFazio.
Okay, good afternoon. For finance, the executive submitted a 6% cut of $918,355. Finance is going to achieve these savings by delaying recruitments and keeping positions vacant in the fiscal management, IT, treasury, and controller programs. Again, they'll have some impact, but finance believes they'll be able to manage. Council staff agrees with the CE's recommendation.
Councilmember Friedson, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll just echo the points that I made at the entirely wrong time of the meeting. Turns out I'm much better with paper documents than on the screen, so
Trust
I had
me.
to follow my own memo and the council memo, and the scrolling function is I'm not as adept at it as I probably should be as the youngest council member here. Not as technologically savvy as some might think, but the points I made before. Listen, I am happy to go along with this. I think we have to make tough choices, but we also have to be flexible, as we talked about before. And if there are moments where we need to make changes, I think we need to. I think at the current moment, we also have to recognize that finance is bringing in contract support and contract help. That money is coming out of the CARES Act funding. The federal funding right now is one-time savings. That's probably the more fiscally prudent way to go about the need at the moment. But I think we need to continue to monitor that and understand how much we are placing upon finance in all these various programs that we have asked them to undertake. And so I think it's similar, I suppose, to the Inspector General, the county attorney, some of the other comments that have been made, that these are some of the positions that are being asked to do far more than they ever have before, largely to deal with our COVID response actions. And while I think the approach that we're taking now on the council side and the executive branch is probably the prudent choice, we need to continue to have a dialogue with the executive branch and the council to make sure finance staff has what it needs to do its job and understand how much pressure and responsibility that we are placing on the team with Mike Covey and everybody that's working over there.
Absolutely. I will add my voice to that and express my appreciation to Mr. Covey and the whole entire finance team. Obviously, this is what it's all about. I mean, when we face a crisis such as this, and just thinking back on the previous, recessions and things like that, finance always plays a pivotal role, and it's all about, stepping up in this way. And so I really do appreciate what Mr. Covey and the team has done. Also good to, remind us that even through this whole entire time, it's great to know that our AAA bond rating is very strong, and that we continue to do everything possible to position ourselves in the best, posture here. So I also do recognize again that what we're actually doing with the savings plan is precisely part of, making sure that our financial standing is what it is, and that we're being proactive and flexible. So not one of the best things for me to have to do, but obviously understanding where we are. Any other comments or any particular objection to this proposal? Okay, so we will accept the staff recommendation. And Mr. Coveyu, thank you so much, and do keep us posted in case things change, etc. And we're here to support you.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing it twice.
That's a special thing. That's a special thing.
We do. We really do appreciate it. Last weekend was the. Go ahead, Mr. Katz.
I was going to say, Mike, that way you got to audit what Andrew told you to say.
That's right. I think last weekend was the first weekend that a lot of people didn't work for the first time in 3 months. So we do appreciate the kind thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you, because it is, we know how taxing it is. I mean, if we're all feeling it, imagine our amazing employees that are there to provide all the assistance as quickly as possible. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you. They've done a fantastic job. Thank you.
They have. Okay, so all right, so we will accept that recommendation as well. So next item, Mr. DeFazio.
Okay, for the Office of Legislative Oversight, the executive submitted a 6.9% cut of $139,505. OLO is going to achieve these savings by delaying the recruitment of an administrative specialist and also get savings realized for the recruitment of a performance management and data analyst. That's the new position for the racial equity and social impact statements, and it's currently in recruitment, and we think the position is probably going to start in early September. So council staff, obviously, we agree with this recommendation.
All right. So, Mr. Seelar, anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I mean, I think we're fine with the recommendation. We'll have the racial equity position hired. It's over at HR right now, and so I expect them to post it hopefully today. It shouldn't be any longer than by Monday or Tuesday. And the administrative assistant position we will recruit for when we return back to the office full time.
All right. I don't see any messages from my colleagues, so without objection, we shall accept this recommendation. Thank you so much, Mr. Seelar, and thank you for your team. Thank you to your team also for all the amazing work that they do. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Item K, management and budget.
Okay. For OMB, the executive submitted a 6% cut of $382,846. OMB is going to achieve these savings by lapsing personnel, $317,846, and also from savings in operating expenses for teleworking, which they're going to save $15,000 for office supplies and training. They're also going to cut $50,000 in contract services for a health aid not needed during the teleworking, and they're also putting an office renovation on hold. Council staff agrees with the CE's recommendations.
Okay. Let's see, any comments from my colleagues? Without objection, we will accept this recommendation. Thank you. Okay. All right, so now we're on to item L, General Services, and our analyst is Ms. Rodriguez Hernandez.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. We also have Department of General Services Director David Dice on the line and OMB Analyst Naimia for this item. The executive has recommended for his FY21 savings plan $1,911,617 in utility savings. This reduction specifically impacts the electricity for buildings portion of the utilities budget and does not impact gas, water, or street lights. The savings were determined by using actual utility usage data from March and April and having knowledge of a level of continued telework for the remainder of the 2020 calendar year as well into the beginning of 2021. And DGS is confident in their savings amount, but due to the fact that utilities is subjected to the climate and use, they have provided that they can report monthly utility data if the council would like, to ensure that they have sufficient funding for the utility needs. And council staff concurs with the executive's recommended reductions.
Great, thank you. Let me turn it over to Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Just really quickly, I just want to thank you, Mr. Dice and your team. I raised this and with some considerable discussion during our initial budget. We decided not to do it then. I thought we could have done it then, but you committed to follow through. You followed through with even more than what I had suggested then, which is what we had suspected was possible given the lowered use of some of the facilities during the COVID crisis, and you stepped in and committed and followed through with exactly what you said you would do. And there's an additional about $300,000 from where we were and what I had suggested to colleagues from the budget. So we ended up at the same place, maybe even a little deeper and further, because you had to prove that you could do one better than what we were discussing during the budget. And just wanted to say that I appreciate it. We don't often talk about when we actually say we're going to do something, work together, follow through, and it happens just as we said it was going to happen. So I just wanted to commend you and thank you for that.
Well, thanks. This is maybe the bright lining around the dark cloud that we're experiencing right now. We continue to track this. I've got a fantastic team that has got its finger on the pulse of the county's energy consumption, not only through not operating buildings, but operating them more efficiently and effectively. We'll continue to track this, and if we get additional savings throughout the year, that'll just accrue to everyone's benefit. But I do want to acknowledge the great energy management team and facilities team that make this possible.
Absolutely. Thanks to them, and thanks to you also for following up on this and coming through. We really do appreciate it. Without objection, we will accept the staff recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Dice.
Thank you very much. I'm going to get back to work.
All right. Okay, so now we have item M. This is procurement, and we should have Mr. Torregas.
Yes, good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
I'm unable to start my video, but it's no big loss, I'm sure, this afternoon. There we go, start my video. What you see in front of you for the procurement process is a reduction of $288,100. It's a 6% exact, 6.0% reduction, and it's all because of lapse. When I looked at the item, I was a bit concerned because I know that my friend, Mr. Shetty, had decided to launch a very important program of 3 embedded positions in departments to speed up the procurement process in 3 key areas for our county. And so I reached out, and OMB guaranteed to me that those 3 positions are being lapsed only for the time that it takes to fill them. I think it's a 3-month lapse for those 3 positions. Other than that, the other positions, OMB and procurement have stated that they can absorb these reductions. So I've recommended the acceptance of the entire $288,100 reduction in procurement budget. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. I don't see any messages from my colleagues. I think without objection, we can accept this recommendation. Yes, Mr. Shetty, thank you so much for everything that you are doing. You've also been an integral part so far of this crazy time with this pandemic. Your office has done amazing work, and with PPE and with everything else that's on your plate. So we do appreciate it. And of course, we accept this, regrettably, but I know that this is part of the process that we're in, that we have to engage in. So thank you so much. And
sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't text you. I'll just say I did you one better, Mr. Shetty. I said really nice things about you when I was speaking on a panel with Delegate Shetty, your wife. So I will refrain from taking up time here because I think I did you one much better and said very nice things about you in front of your better half.
That is much appreciated these days because of how much time I spend in isolation. It's good for her to know that it's actually not just me like going through Facebook with you. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Fritz is on a roll here. All right, thank you so much. Now we are on to public information.
Thank you. As you see, the executive has recommended $234,822 for the PIO office, the Public Information Office. The entire reduction is in the MC311 element of the PIO budget, as opposed to the Central Office for Public Information. And it's all made up of lapses plus a professional services contract that's being reduced by $10,000. Again, the discussion that I've had with OMB has led me to believe that these are sustainable lapses under the current condition. So I'm recommending the executive's suggested cuts as well to you. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any hands going up or anything like that. So I think without objection, we will accept this recommendation. Thank you. All right. Item O, technology services.
It's the last one on the list. The Department of Technology Services has come up with a 6% reduction of $2,086,048 for its department. The vast majority of it is in lapses, dollar-wise, although there is a reduction in conference attendance, other travel expenses, contractor expenses, and a partial reduction in membership in Public Technology Inc. or Institute. The concern I have here is that there's almost 12 positions that are being lapsed, and right now DTS is doing yeoman's duty to keep us all connected, to keep us all working. Without the infrastructure support, none of this would be happening. So as a consequence, I've had some concerns, but again, as you said, Madam Chair, these are extraordinary times. And I think DTS has stepped up to the plate and offered these cuts. I wonder if my friend Gail Roper has any comments to make before I conclude. Thank you.
Ms. Roper?
Well, I can't get video to work, but I will say that we've really buckled down as it relates to these cost savings to try and do the right thing. IT, our organization really is the front line. So many of us have participated in not only the COVID-related matters, but also we're heavily involved in recovery. I believe nationally, technology, IT has come to the forefront in this, particularly in this telework position that we're in now. We're heavily focused on our infrastructure. We support 911, we support all of the infrastructure for the county. So I think it's important to know that this is a great sacrifice for us, particularly as it relates to personnel. Just wanted to put that out there. I feel as though we can do the best we can moving forward, and that we have really been challenged in bringing over 4,000 individuals to a teleworking environment in a matter of 2 months. So those kinds of efforts take the whole organization. I did want to mention the fact that we've got to get the chief digital officer hired and get that person in so that we can move forward in a positive way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Roper. Mr. Rega, is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Without objection, we will accept this recommendation. Okay, great. Well, we're done with this particular item. The next item is again, as I said earlier, it really is a quick check-in. Obviously, the COVID-19 disrupted a lot of our schedule in terms of when things were supposed to come back, et cetera. And then, as we got into budget, we made a decision led by the council president that we should put, all bills on hold, et cetera. And so now we're back to this one. And this is the Public Elections Fund. Just to remind everybody, obviously, when we launched this very ambitious program, we had an opportunity to test it with the last election, and there was a lot of feedback and a lot of recommendations, et cetera. And so we engaged in a process with the community, with candidates, et cetera, to get their feedback and incorporated that into a number of sessions that the GO committee held in order to see what things we can modify. I want to thank Mr. Jay Crow, who is here as well, for everything that he did during that incredibly extraordinary election cycle and managing this along with Mr. Demarinis. What we are here to do is to do a quick check-in to make sure this is ready to go to full council. After my remarks, I'll turn it over to Ms. Michael just to go over very quickly in terms of what this committee decided to do vis-a-vis amendments to the current law. And then I think also maybe, I don't know if this is the moment, or maybe we come back, but obviously we have seen how this pandemic has really changed the way, the presidential election campaigning, et cetera, really changed the way it is being done. And who knows how long, this kind of approach is going to be with us. So that is another interesting little wrinkle. And then we had some conversations about changes at the state level, and just wanted to make sure that that is on track. So let me turn it over to you, Ms. Myhill, to go over what the committee has already decided, and then we can check in with my colleagues to see if there's anything additional that we kind of missed, and then we will schedule it for full council. Ms. Myhill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be as brief as I possibly can. You should know at the beginning that this is a bill that all three of you have already seen. I have not made any additional changes or anything, so everything should be fairly familiar to you. So this is probably just a refresher. So I will start on page 2 and just quickly walk through the issues, as well as how your recommendations are reflected in the bill that is attached. It is a draft bill. It hasn't been introduced. I did want to also note that once it is introduced, it will, of course, go through the legislative process. So this is not your last chance to review the bill. You'll certainly get another chance after the public hearing. I did also want to note that although I did not attach everything from prior packets, since you all have done a very in-depth review of this, I did include the links to the 2 packets from the earlier work sessions. So those are available to you if you wanted to have additional background information. So just turning to the top of page 2, you'll recall that you talked about the one bite at the apple rule, which was that the county code essentially required that a candidate could only submit one application, and had a very, you did try to rectify, the council tried to rectify a mistake that would have been made, but there were still issues with it. And so the committee recommendation was to provide, once a candidate submits their application, to provide for a 10-day period after that submission where the candidate can cure or supplement their initial submission. And I just noted for you that that recommendation is incorporated on Circle 5 and lines 92 through 98. And Madam Chair, I'll just keep going unless you tell me to hush and somebody's got a question. So. Yes. Second, the reimbursement cutoff deadline. To address this issue, the committee recommended that the reimbursement deadline be extended to 30 days after the election, and to make clear that contributions that are submitted up to and including election day are matchable. That recommendation is incorporated on Circle 2 lines 20 and Circle 7 lines 140 and 154. The third issue was whether or not a person should be able to contribute the maximum during both the primary and the general election. The committee did not want to go in that direction. However, you did unanimously recommend amending the law to increase the maximum contribution to $250 per election cycle. You split a little bit. A majority of the committee recommended amending the law to provide that there would be a match to the maximum. And so that recommendation is incorporated into the draft bill in lots of different spots. Most notably, circles 6 through 7, lines 106 to 130 provides the new matching amounts. Number 4 was the committee recommended clarifying that the law be clarified regarding the treatment of in-kind contributions. The committee recommendation was to clarify that in-kind donations could not be counted toward the initial qualifying contribution requirements. Number 5 related to when the participant should be required to close their public election fund account, and the committee recommendation was following the recommendations of Mr. DeMarinis. You recommended the law be amended to increase the closeout period to 90 days post-election and allow carryover funds within certain criteria that are bulleted out for you on the top of page 3. And so that recommendation is also incorporated into the bill. Number 6 related to recount situations. This was an issue that the committee didn't quite come to conclusion on, but had asked council staff to reach out to all council members on this issue, and I did so, and a majority of the council did want to set the program up so that recounts would have its own the recount situation is outside of the public election fund law. As you know, this will require state legislation, so I will reach out to the Office of Intergovernmental Relations to implement this recommendation, and then once we get state law that permits us to do so, we will have to do a local bill to implement that recommendation.
What I'm going to do is have Ms. Myhill go through all the items, and then we will start the question and answer or conversation. So continue.
Okay, sure. Number 7, related to whether or not there should be additional penalties for campaigns that intentionally undermine the program's requirements and intent. You did agree that that is something that you wanted to incorporate into the program, and so that recommendation is in the attached bill on circles 11 and 12. You also decided that the law should be amended to require an end of election audit. What you decided was that the general parameters of the audit, that language would be in the bill, and then the regulations could be more specific. There is one change to the law that Mr. Crow and I talked about, or excuse me, to the bill that Mr. Crow and I talked about. As of the draft that is in the packet, it would assign the end-of-year audit to the Department of Finance. Mr. Crow thought that it might better be addressed by internal audit, and so in order to effectuate that change, it might just be best to reference the county executive has to conduct the audit, and then the executive can determine which department is best to actually perform that audit. So if you concur with that, then that would be one change that I would make to the draft bill before it is introduced. Number 9 at the bottom of page 3, the committee agreed that the law should be changed to clarify that a campaign that submitted an intent to participate in the program but did not meet the qualifying thresholds, the committee recommended that language be added to make it clear that campaign then essentially reverts to a traditional campaign. And the final issue that is reflected in the bill is updating the duties for the committee to recommend funding for the public election fund. Your recommendation was to expand the duties of the fund to include expand the duties of the committee to include public education and engagement, also increase the number of committee members, and add language to ensure that the committee reflects the diversity of the county. And Madam Chair, those are the issues that had committee recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Council President Katz.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Myhill, and to the committee. You know, when I look back at this, when I saw that I was a dissenting vote on number 4 about in-kind contributions, I had to stop and scratch my head a little bit why I did that. And then I believe my concern was and is that for an in-kind contribution, the way this is set up, it can't be for a match, which I appreciate. It can't be for a setup as to that person is actually donating to you to qualify for the that you can get public financing, and and it's my understanding that if a person gave $100 of in-kind contribution, with the way that this law would change, that number would be subtracted from the amount that they could give you for the additional contribution. In other words, they could only give you $50 more the way it is now, or $150 if this changes to $250. So it's almost like you're being penalized if someone gives you an in-kind contribution, and that's my concern with that. It's like it is a contribution, but it's not considered a contribution except when you can't get any additional funding for it. So that's my problem with this one. I don't know what the answer is, but that's my concern with it.
So is it possible to, I do think it's important for the threshold to qualify, as well as the matching, that would be, that should be monetary contributions. But I also see how in-kind contributions play a role, and they should be, reported somehow. So I'm wondering if there's a middle ground there of some sort, where they're not completely, like Council President Cass was saying, prohibited and penalized, but also not, because I feel like it goes against the spirit of the law if they're counted towards the threshold to qualify, or if they're matched. So anyway.
I can certainly brainstorm with executive staff to see if we can come up with some options. The committee had 2 very lengthy discussions about this issue, and what a majority of the committee at the time was concerned about is sometimes in-kind contributions are not. It's easy to know when you spent $50 in cash money. It's not so easy to understand what $50 is worth in time or materials, or that's really what the committee had struggled with before. But I'm certainly happy to work with executive staff to see if we can come up with something.
Mr. Crow?
I was just going to say it's treated similarly to out-of-county contributions. You're limited to the $150 limit, but you don't get matching, and it's not counted towards your qualification. So that's in-kind is similar to out-of-county resident contributions.
And if I may, Madam Chair,
yes.
And I appreciate that, I do, but if it's from a county resident, they're not out of county. And so it's like purgatory here. To me, if it's a county resident and it counted towards one of your, whatever, 125, 250, whatever that threshold is, then that to me should be, if it's a county resident, if that person's a county resident, then that should count towards your qualifying, not for the dollars, but for the number of people. And to me, that would be something that's fair. I mean, obviously, I would now ask somebody not to give me an in-kind contribution. And of course, the way it is set up, many in-kind contributions have always been from a business anyhow. Here, let me give you the sign. Here, let me do. And of course, when you're doing public financing, you can't take it from a business. So it's the person who wants to do whatever. You can't take the in-kind contribution. I mean, enough said on it, but that's my problem with that one. And I do think it's if we could look in to see whether there's anything else that could be done, I'd appreciate it. If not, I understand. Madam Chair, I do have a concern about number 6 as well. Do you want to move through that?
Right. Let me.
Do we want to speak item by item, or?
Let me go to Councilmember Freakson if you have a follow-up on the issue.
Yeah, just very briefly on this. I think we had a lengthy discussion. I was pretty clear on where I stood. I thought that the chair and I were in agreement there, and I appreciate where you're coming from. To me, it's just very clear. First of all, you have to have consistency in the election code, and in-kind contributions are very clearly defined and very clearly treated. So whether the cap, in Montgomery County is $150 or $250, or the state cap is $6,000, at a certain point you hit the cap, and at a certain point, if you provide an in-kind contribution, you can't go over that cap. And so it's not a penalty. We're treating that, and it's defined very clearly. If it's a service that you normally provide professionally and get paid for, and you provide that service to the campaign, it's an in-kind contribution. And I just, we can't go. We have to have a system that operates within the bounds of state election law. And if we try to change that, we run into all kinds of problems. And then in addition to that, any other treatment is ripe for auditing issues and major problems. I mean, we're talking about what is a generous match of taxpayer dollars in order to encourage, greater small dollar participation of Montgomery County residents. That is a laudable goal. But the second we put ourselves in a position where that could be abused, I think we open ourselves up for criticism of the program and real challenges, additional administrative issues. I don't want to belabor it. That was the points that I had made previously. That's the rationale. It's not without merit, your concerns, Council President Katz, but I just feel very strongly about this particular point.
And on this one, candidly, what you're looking at is professional services. I'm looking at it for somebody that gives you a house party, that they say, and so what I would do is say, look, don't, thanks for letting me have the house party. I'll pay for everything, and then you all give me the donation rather than then you buy the food. I mean,
I would argue to you that legally you have to do that. I mean, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to have somebody give you up to the maximum, be matched for that with public dollars, and have them host a party.
No, they wouldn't. I'm not saying that they would. I'm not saying that they would get a match. I'm just saying that it subtracts off of what they could give you. I mean, if they gave you $50 worth of food, the most they could have given you as a match as a donation would be $100.
And I would say exactly that's the whole point. I mean,
well, I understand, but
because it separates out who can. If you allow somebody with greater means to host a party and give you the maximum and not count that, then you will have changed the dynamic of who this is accessible for and who it isn't, and what the capacity of the individual county resident is. I mean, certain people, who has a house that's big enough to host a party, and who can give more than the $150 or $250. I think I understand where you're coming from, but I think that, to me, that's the whole point, that you shouldn't be able to accept.
But you're not stating it the way that I'm stating it. What I'm stating is that it doesn't count as a match, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't count as anything except you have to have 125 people or whatever the number is to qualify to get a match. And to me, that donation is a donation. But we're not showing it as a donation if that person lives in Montgomery County in any way other than the reporting of it. But you're not showing it as a person who was donating to you for your campaign, to say that they're one of the 125 people that donated to meet the qualifying opening. I'm not going to belabor it either. It's not the end of the world to me.
Yeah. So since we did have quite a bit of conversation, I think that when we go to full council,
right.
If staff has any other options, the council president Katz wants to introduce. I think I'm still sticking with the decision that I made previously, just because it is kind of a tough area, so I'm going to stick with that. So the majority of the committee made that decision, but obviously, if Council President Katz, when we go to full council, wants to make a proposal, then it would be great if there were some options that he can,
And thank you, and I will move on. But if there is not a better proposal, then I'm willing to give up on this. But I would appreciate if someone could come up and think about whether there could be a better proposal.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, and there was another item. I think it was it 6? Was somebody? I don't remember which council member.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, Council President.
And on number 6 about the recount, can you remind me, please, Ms. Mayo? So you'd have to set up a separate account for the recount, and if at that point, if this law changes, the most you can keep is $5,000 from the account that you a public finance account that you just were involved in that election. So you can't spend any of that money on the recount. And are you still tied into the limit of the $250 that someone has given you? Can you go back to any of your donors who had given you the maximum or whatever and ask for another donation, because this is a separate election? But you know what I'm asking.
Yes, I know what you're asking. And when the committee discussed this with Jared, his recommendation was that since this is a situation that does not happen or probably is unlikely to occur very often, that there would it would basically be a separate account with its own restrictions on fundraising and expenditures and such. So it would not be within the 150 or 250 if the committee's increase is taken. So it would have its own rules. It wouldn't be bound by the rules of the primary and the general.
Then I'm fine with that.
All right, Councilor Feetson.
Yeah, just quickly, we had a robust conversation about this too. I think we all landed close to consensus. I think originally I had agreed with Mr. DeMarinis, and then we went back and forth. I think we landed there, but the aspect of this is it has to be set up separately. So we would have to determine what that looks like, working with the state delegation to determine that. Most likely, and what the recommendation of Jared was at the time, I believe, and I think it makes sense, is to set up whatever restrictions you want, but make it completely independent, and just in this law say that it's permissible. So you would just allow for fundraising, and it's a completely separate entity, and it wouldn't be prohibited. And if that were the case, then the same donor could go back and give. It would be viewed as completely separately, as if it wasn't for the same election. If you didn't want to do that, you could put the prohibition on the new account, which we could set up with the state delegation, but separate from this bill. It would be hard to do because they'd be viewed independently, and it is difficult to combine two separate accounts and do the auditing of two separate accounts, I would think. But I do think that's the right approach.
And my only other question would be, since you can't use public funds for this, does that mean that that separate account, and I hope and I believe it is the rare time that this happens, would that separate account be under the same, if you use public funds for the regular election, do you have to use the same limitations for this one? In other words, could you not ask a donor for more than $250, or because you're not using public funds and it's a separate account, are you then just like it was, a new day, and you could ask for more?
What I was saying earlier is that's what we would have to determine with the state delegation to decide what we deemed appropriate. I think that you could set it up so that the same restrictions of a cap of 250 or 150 or whatever the case may be, to maintain the spirit of this law on this separate account, that would be allowed, or you could have it have no restrictions. We would have to decide at that time, separately from these restrictions, what restrictions would be appropriate for that type of account. But we'd basically be setting up a separate type of account uniquely for a recount circumstance, allow for fundraising to happen at a certain point and not have a taxpayer funded match, but potentially have similar caps.
And I think something to keep in mind is that on a recount type of situation, it's not as if you have the same amount of time that you had before to court the limited whatever. So I think that's why if you're going to get clarification, that needs to be taken into consideration, because you kind of need to raise that money quick, because there is a time limitation to which you have to respond. So I would argue that you shouldn't have the same sort of cap issue, and and maybe not, the matching from the taxpayers' money, given that it's just such a different, But Ms. Myhill, is that what in the packet is referred to? The fact that you were saying you needed to follow up with OIR to see what's going on in the state level, and if we can get clarification? Was that another issue? I can't remember.
No, that is the issue that requires state legislation to actually implement that recommendation. So those parameters of that account are not incorporated into the draft bill that's attached to your packet, because we don't yet know what the General Assembly is going to be comfortable passing. And so, so in order to implement this recommendation, I will reach out to OIR and get that ball rolling.
Okay, that would be really important for us to get that done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, Ms. Navarro, I assume the council president is okay for introducing at the next available legislative day.
I'll check with him. Yeah.
But
we'll send him a memo.
Yeah, right. I did just want to make clear that when it comes to the audit, if we assign that to the county executive as opposed to Department of Finance, I think that would be preferable to address issues that Mr. Crow had raised. I just wanted to confirm that you were okay with that.
Is there objection with that recommendation, colleagues? I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay, so we'll change that. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, anything else?
I have nothing for you.
All right.
Happy Friday afternoon.
Yeah, could I just ask operational? I mean, there's a couple items here that there was slight disagreement on. I think we agree with most of this. I'm happy to move forward, together. And I think, reserving the right that anybody can propose changes and tweaks as we move forward, recognizing that, there's more information and discussions to be had. And I think, we shouldn't let, 10% or 5% of discussion stop 90 or 95% of consensus. But just wanted operationally, like, what the next step, we introducing this as a government operations committee to the council, what would be the timing of that? I just wasn't totally clear of kind of what the next steps were.
So the reason why I chose this chair to bring this back to us was because, of course, it's been a little while since we had these conversations, and I just wanted to do a quick check-in to refresh all of our memories. Now it's going to be introduced to full council. Obviously, we will note that there were a couple of items that was not unanimous, of course, including this, the issue of the language is going to be with in-kind, contributions, and we'll say some language has been developed in case other council members are interested. But then, we just go through it as any other bill, and then it will be passed as the amendments that so many thought we should consider to update the law. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. That makes sense. I just wanted okay. So now it'll be drafted. Now that we've kind of confirmed that we're still same place. Some of the background work from staff that was requested by the committee seems like years ago, but months ago. And then we'll move forward with a draft bill by the GO committee with noting a few of the contentious or points of discussion to remain. Or however. Okay. Great.
We can introduce it before you break for the summer, and then we'll have a hearing in the fall, and then it'll go through the process from there.
Okay, that sounds good.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Is it necessary to take another vote as amended, or?
No, you don't have to take a vote as amended. You're certainly welcome to. It's we can introduce it as it is, and then it'll of course come back to the GO committee, because I'm sure issues will be raised at the hearing, and so you'll have an opportunity again to review the legislation.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. All right. Sounds great. All right. So with that, I believe that we are adjourned.
Happy weekend.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Under budget. We cut funding and we were under budget on time.
Listen, might as well. I mean, I just feel like anything else, might as well continue on and on and on. I'm just kidding. All right, everybody have a great afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Every meeting's like a party.
Updated with up-to-date transportation information to aid you in your daily commute.
Or about Monday, July 12, 2020.